Today's episode is brought to you by Surfshark. If it feels like the internet is getting more dangerous by the second, and feel that hackers have more ways to target you, trackers are following your every move, and malware is hiding all over the web, luckily there is a solution. You can get a VPN. Essentially, it will hide your location and make you more difficult to identify and target. But privacy and security are not all that Surfshark has to offer. If you have a VPN, you will forget all about those pesky geo restrictions. Everything from news sources to social media apps that have become unavailable to you because of your location. All you need to do is change your virtual location and access all the entertainment you want safely and securely. And the best part is you can try out Surfshark completely risk-free because they have a 30-day money-back guarantee. So get Surfshark VPN at surfshark.deals/TTD. And don't forget, enter promo code TTD for 83% off and 3 months free. But now, on with today's show.
Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where today I have an inspirational tech startup story that I hope will inspire and motivate you to manifest the future you want, no matter where you're listening in the world. So today's guest is Tomas Gorny, and he's going to share his story and talk about how at Nextiva they're bringing together communications, customer management, intelligence and automation to help businesses build lasting relationships with their customers. But I don't want to reveal any spoilers because this is one of those stories that literally has it all, so buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to Arizona, where Tomas is waiting to speak with us now. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Absolutely. Let me give you a little bit of a background because you sense an accent here. You know, I was originally born in Poland, and since I can remember, I was around 7 years old. I was convinced that one day I will move to America. And when I was growing up in Poland was a poor country, and I was living in a small town. We didn't have a telephone. My parents didn't have a car earlier in my life, but we did have a black and white TV that was streaming a couple of channels, few hours a day, and with old movies, and some of them were American movies. And this is probably where I got my idea of coming to America. So as you can imagine, you know, when I proposed the idea roughly at the age of 7 to my parents of moving to America, this was not quite what they have expected from a 7-year-old boy living in a communistic country. So as far as I can remember, they looked at themselves and they said, you know, as good villagers, because like I said, I was living in a small town, and they said, you know, we don't know anybody in America. And for them, the subject was closed. So then a few years forward, at the age of 14, my family moved to Germany. And then I myself, at the age of 20, I dropped out of college and moved to the United States and fulfill my original promise. And so I packed up and I moved directly to Los Angeles. And one of the reasons why I moved to Los Angeles, or the primary reason actually why I moved to Los Angeles, was because I was too intrigued with the American movies, especially I don't know if you still recall the TV show Beverly Hills 90210.
Yes,
you know,
I remember it well.
I love that, you know, so I said, you know, this is exactly where I want to live. And that's how I landed in LA.
Oh,
and so yeah, and so, you know, I like my life story is kind of like a story of Forrest Gump, you know, like just keep going, you know, wherever it takes you. And so when I arrived here in United States in LA, I literally didn't speak a word of English. And for the very first few years, I was working for free in exchange for equity to participate in an internet business. And then while I was doing that, to support myself. And I was living literally for a couple of years of $3 a day by doing various jobs, from at night, from carpet cleaning at the restaurants and apartment building to car parking to being a waiter of different type of events on the weekend. And, I had the best time of my life. I was living in the country that I wanted to be. I was working for internet business and, I was able to support myself. And so a few years later, I was actually very fortunate, that the business that I was participated in sold. And literally overnight, I was living the American dream. But the American dream didn't last for too long because 3 years later, I literally lost everything again by investing and running businesses. However, as much as I would never want to repeat that lesson again, this was probably the best tuition I could have ever paid. I have learned so many valuable lessons. And all of that, what I just described, happened before I was 26 years old. So from there, prior to Nextiva, I went on to start some market-defining companies that I'm really proud of, and I'm happy to address them a little bit later. But let's just talk about Nextiva and how Nextiva started. Nextiva started because we subscribe here at Nextiva into the fundamental belief that when people are giving the right tools, they can do amazing things and accomplish their dreams. And when we started Nextiva, which was in around 2008, business was literally done on the napkin. Businesses were struggling to have access even to the most rudimentary tools to help them to build, manage, and grow their companies. And what was available in the market was either too expensive, too difficult to use, and ultimately not very useful. And we have experienced that same dilemma firsthand in our prior businesses. And what we discovered that many other people have the same pain points. So what we made it to our calling to democratize innovation, so every business will have the same tools and a chance to win. And ultimately, we started in communication because communication is the most fundamental service and non-discretionary. And from there, we have expanded to customer management, AI, automation, and some of the things that I hope we will talk about today. So that's kind of a little bit about my background. Hopefully, it wasn't too long.
Not at all. It's a inspiring story, how you've gone from Poland to Germany to Los Angeles and how you found that path there. And I know there'll be a lot of people listening to this podcast, maybe a few startup founders as well at the very beginning of their career and maybe feel a bit disillusioned. But I just love how you've stuck to your guns. You have that dream of going to the US, you've made it happen, and how you're now literally living the American dream. It really is inspirational. I just hope it inspires somebody somewhere to follow in those kind of footsteps too. And for people that are listening and hearing about Nextiva for the very first time, could you just tell me a little bit more about the kind of problems you set out to solve for your customers with technology?
Yeah, no, happy to do this. But if you don't mind, let me actually tell you how we even got on the way to solve what we're doing today. Yeah. And so that's kind of it. It's a little bit of a continuation of the story, that I went through. It was probably around 1991, and I was like 15, 16 years old. And if you recall, this was at the time where computers weren't really accessible to everyone. DOS operating system really was the operating system for PCs, and it took a real effort for anyone to operate this. Like certain generation wouldn't even not touch it. They would rather stick to a typewriter. And I still remember those big DOS manuals on people's desk just to execute those long string command lines. And then this was around 1991, Microsoft came out with the very first successful version of the Windows operating system, which I believe was the Windows 3.1. And this changed everything. It literally opened the market for computers, and computers started becoming widely adopted. And truly, by living through this transition from DOS to Windows, this was a pivotal moment in my life, even though I still wasn't sure what I'm going to do in my life, but I knew I wanted to do something transformational, something that can create massive change and make positive impact on many people, similar to the transition from DOS to Windows. And this far, I was again very fortunate because I was able to be in my life part of 3 market defining businesses. And the first one was when we started a company called iPower. And iPower was a website hosting company. And back then, building websites was not something that was accessible to every business. And this was between 1996 to 2001. Small businesses needed a programmer, a developer, essentially a middleman to have a website. And this made websites not really affordable to many businesses. It was a luxury item. So when we started iPower, we made it to our calling, kind of consistent with my philosophy, to really democratize that innovation. And we developed a solution that allowed businesses to build, manage, market their website on their own, without technical knowledge, and without any middleman. And not to me and to many people, this was a similar moment for website as it was 10 years prior, in the transition from DOS to Windows. It literally opened the market. And I remember the days, before we launched the product, because the company was already operational, we were signing 3 customers a day. And then literally after we launched this product, we went from 3 customers to over 100 customers a day overnight. And then within a couple of months, we were signing 10,000 customers a day. We became the fastest growing website hosting company in the United States and in the world for a couple of years. And what really this taught me is that if you give people the right tools, they can do amazing things. And seeing, living, participating, ultimately contributing to that transformation, in my mind, is actually probably one of the most and largest achievements that you can accomplish in business. And then a few years later, I started another company, which was a website security company called Sidelog. Before actually the industry even existed. And I was going to spare you the detail to speed this up a little bit. We grew the company to 10 million paying customers. We became the largest website security company in the world, still are, protecting most websites on the internet. And, those were defining moments. But, the reason actually we are here and we're talking here is really, what we're doing here at Nextiva. And the reason we are here today, because I believe Nextiva is one of the largest opportunities from all of those. Because right now, we are going through a period of time, or I would say right now, businesses struggle. Businesses struggle to communicate and manage their customers. The way I frame it is that business communication is essentially at the state of crisis. And because businesses have tough time connecting with them, they have tough time understanding them and remember them because there's so much noise in the market. And this is ultimately the problem that we're trying to solve here.
Absolutely love that. And before you came on the podcast today, I did a little bit of research on you. And one of the things that stood out to me was one of the things that you said about how even the largest communications players miss the most valuable part of communications, which is connecting the content of those conversations. Can you expand on that?
Oh, absolutely. It's kind of going back to the point I just made.
Yeah.
Today businesses are truly failing to connect with the customers and even with the team members. And there are 2 major issues that contribute to this. Number 1, complexity of customer relationships is growing. And number 2, customers' expectations are rising. Because today customers expect to communicate with any business via any channels. They want to be able to switch between them. And they want for companies to remember them. They don't want to start the conversation all over again. Right? But that's not that easy because we live in a world where communication channels and customer management tools, and you call it productivity tools, I could go on forever, are increasingly fragmented. And as a result of all of that, understanding customers actually is becoming more difficult than ever before. But the pressure for most businesses, especially small businesses, is really increasing to get it right because, some of the largest businesses are getting it right. And we as consumers got accustomed to that because we as consumers do not compare companies anymore to the closest competitor. We compare companies to the best experiences we ever had. And we have been conditioned by some of the best companies in the world, like Apple, Amazon, Uber, to truly expect effortless experiences. And we want that experiences from everybody that we do business with. And this is exactly where the problems start, because most businesses do not have the resources, the capabilities to create those personalized customer experiences. And the reason for that is because on average, businesses use between 15 to 25 sideload applications to communicate, manage, collaborate with the customers and teams. The customer data of those applications live in silos, and they are not integrated. And integrations are not as easy as promised. And the crux of the problem is that companies are relying today on dated and siloed technologies that are not designed for today's needs. And there is a lack of a solution in the marketplace. And this is exactly the change that we here at Nextiva want to bring to the world. And, we have invested now north of $100 million of our own capital prior to our funding round to build a platform from ground up to provide a complete view of the customer across all channels of communications. And that has never been done before. This is a different view at the market that our competitors. And, Nextiva essentially brings communication channels, customer management, intelligent automation, all together into one platform.
And I suspect that those words will resonate with business leaders listening all over the world. So I guess the big question is, how can businesses address and overcome challenges like this?
Unfortunately, most businesses cannot overcome these challenges, at least not by themselves. Yeah. Because, like I said before, the complexity of customer relationship is growing and the number of applications is been increasing in the marketplace. On the other side, you got the large businesses that running away from everyone else by creating connected experiences because they have the capital, they have the resources, they have the skills, right? And they have the time to create the simple, intuitive customer experiences. And all of this leads to this big gap, the growing gap between the leading companies, the very few fortunate ones that I mentioned before, as compared to everyone else. I mean, and that gap is growing exponentially. And in my view, the largest problem is really that the entire application industry has been an abject failure for years. Because for over 20 years, we have been developing point solutions to solve specific problems. And in the last several years, there was an explosion of standalone applications. Even not 10 years ago, there were maybe a couple of thousands applications. Now we have tens of thousands standalone applications that businesses can use. And what unfortunately gets lost in those applications is the customer. And, we now almost accepted that it became completely accepted that there's this digital glass ceiling where most businesses cannot break through to have access to the same tools that leading enterprises have. So we at Nextiva, like I said, we make it to our calling to democratize innovation. And we envision a world where instead of focusing on all those various tools, we are merging technologies to create more of a seamless experiences that put the customer first, that put the team members first. And what this means is that, we want to reduce the cognitive overload for internal users by reducing the number of applications they have to in between. And because stitching just multiple applications endlessly is an old paradigm of thinking. The same way, I think that it is an old paradigm of thinking of customer management and communication remaining disconnected. And this is exactly what we're fixing here, because we believe that customer communication, customer management, productivity tools, collaboration, they truly have to live together in one place. And when you think about it, this could be, you perceive like a huge, big, novel idea of how you're going to do this. But this has been done already before in the consumer space. And the best example of this is Apple. After the iPhone started, essentially iPhone have replaced countless gadgets that we have been using before, right? From cameras, navigations, pages, and so on. And, we would never go back to that experiences. But somehow we are willing to continue to deal with that mess, with business applications. And, there has to be a better way. And this is what we are working on.
And what we're talking about here is very much a universal problem that you're tackling. And I'm curious, are there any trends in the conversations that you're having with your customers all over the world? And what are they increasingly coming to you and asking for help with? Are there any trends?
Yes, the tendency, I guess, we're here on a tech talk, right? So the tendency would be maybe to provide a little bit more of a complex answer, but I think the problems are fairly simple that businesses are facing. They want to grow, they want to acquire customers, they want to keep customers, and that's why they're buying applications, and they want to make the employees happy, because ultimately retaining employees becomes tougher and tougher. So what they need is the set of tools that help them to accomplish those goals. And most businesses also, you got to keep in mind, at least most of our customers, they are not technologists. They are users of technology. And they want tools that are simple, they are easy to use, and don't require a system administrator just to manage them and for them to afford them. So unfortunately, our current environment has created, especially over the last couple of years, this perfect storm, and there are three major trends that I see. And one we already talked about quite a bit is that the operating environments, because of the increase of number of applications, are becoming more complex because of the explosion of all those tools. Then number two is that the rise of customer expectation is real. We're talking about rising customers' expectations forever, but over the last couple of years, I think we have seen a big shift there. And then the other shift that really is a trend is the hybrid work environment and the increasing demands from employees asking for flexibility and for companies needing to comply with those. And when you look at all of those trends, these trends have been developing for a long time, but the pandemic truly accelerated them. So while the big businesses, with all, kind of the financial resources are well equipped to address those, majority of businesses really are falling behind and struggling. And that's what we see, that's what we hear. And that's the problems that we're trying to address with our customers.
And if we expand that to the kind of tech trends that you're seeing across the industry and things that you're monitoring, is there anything that stands out for you there?
Yeah. I have kind of two different point of view. Yeah. One is let me talk about some of the facts first, sure. The market facts, and then the second part I will talk to you about more my kind of personal view at that. And so currently we see in experiencing three macro trends that also support our platform vision. One, again, the same one all over again. The widespread adoption of different siloed application makes operating environment complex. I mean, that's like we see it, every single day for businesses. Number two, the global migration of cloud communication and software is truly speeding up. Again, we've been talking about it for a long time, but eventually, not long time from now, everything will be in the cloud. And then the last one, probably the most interesting one, is that digitization of communication channels are making AI and automation significantly more strategic to communication. So let me expand on this. What it means. What does digitization really means? What it means is that today conversations can be recorded, they can be transcribed, they can be analyzed, and by doing so, we can then use conversations and apply AI to it and give businesses meaningful real-time insight with customer sentiment, satisfaction, and predict future outcomes. And we can help businesses to trigger alerts, automations, and be proactive. And when you look at some of the best-in-class businesses, they are already doing this, right? This is nothing like so revolutionary, because they are able to go beyond just knowing the customer preferences. They are able to anticipate future customer needs based on conversation, customer journey, experience, behaviors, comparative insight. I can go on forever on this one. And they're able to engage customers with the right message at the right time. That's why those large companies are so good in capturing our hearts and minds. And ultimately also they become more efficient because they reduce the amount of mundane and repetitive tests that they staff have to do. But right now, all of what I just described is really reserved for a small number of large companies with all those resources. And, most companies struggle. And when we talk about democratizing innovation, this is exactly what we are talking about, bringing all of this together in a solution in a non-intimidated way that everybody can use it. And at Nextiva, we are essentially bringing, communication, customer management, AI automation all together, as I said before. But more importantly, the statement I want to make is that our goal is to level the playing field for all companies. So every company can compete on kind of their own terms. So to sum it up here, and the bottom line is that we see the need here at Nextiva in the world for every business to fundamentally change how they communicate and connect with customers. And we are building what we believe a market-defining platform that will help businesses to grow by delivering amazing customer experiences and will reduce the reliance of those countless applications. And, one day when we look back at this entire industry, I believe it will be mind-blowing for us to think of how we have done business today. Because it is not easy for me to envision that in 5 to 10 years from now, we are still going to toggle between all the different tools and applications just to communicate with customers and manage their records. And there will be a better way. And Nextiva, I believe, will have a say in our industry where the industry is going. And this is ultimately the kind of change that we are bringing.
And just to bring to life everything that you've talked about today, do you have any examples of how you're bringing together things like communications, customer management, intelligence and automation, all to help businesses build those deep, long-lasting relationships with their customers? Is there anything spring to mind that you could share to bring all that to life?
Yeah, absolutely. First, it's really, we're bringing this this has been a journey that we have been on since 2014, and not different like, companies, great companies prior to us, like Microsoft or Apple, they went through different iteration of the product, learning from the market, from the customers, and so did we. And, we have our share of successes, we had our share of failures. And, what we understand, from the market and the demand and where the market is going from customers today, that, delivering a single app that is non-intimidating, that is easy to use, that put the customer essentially at the center of the universe is of the ecosystem, the conversation, at the ecosystem, it's really the key. The best way to describe it, maybe, if I can go back for a second, when you look at where the market is today, and I'm going to address the market of communication and CRM, in communication for 100 years, communication companies were concerned about delivery. And, over the last 20 years, we went from copper to fiber, and now we transitioned from the closet to the cloud, as I said before. And more in the recent years, even the most modern communication companies, they are still concerned about delivery, but they adding SMS, chat, video to maybe their phone channels. And all of this are important and foundational, but we see the world very differently because, in our mind, this is not good enough. When I look at where we're taking it, it's a totally different direction. We're essentially, looking the future of communication as creating deeper connection by taking the conversational insight, the context of conversation, organizing them regardless of channel, and seamlessly connecting them with customer management and productivity tools in one app. And all of that is done, with a simple user, almost a consumer-like interface. And this is an entirely new paradigm of thinking to everybody in communication, but also everybody in CRM. Because when you look at the CRM world on the other side, today conversations not only disconnected, but in some way they are being held hostage in customer management solutions. Because for years, CRMs has positioned themselves at the center of the ecosystem. And that's not a way that businesses can be successful anymore. So what we do here at Nextiva is really, and we say it in kind of a, I would say, edgy way, that we are liberating conversations, because we put conversation at the center of the ecosystem of every business. And then we empower businesses and equip them with the productivity tools to manage customers and collaborate with the teams. And this is an entirely new way of connecting with customers and teams, entirely new way of thinking. But the reason we do this, because I don't know another way that you can actually get this done, given that 90% of all data today comes from customer and team interactions and has been generated in the last 2 years. And the bottom line is that most communication companies are not really focusing on the core problem, while most CRM companies and other systems cannot keep up with the velocity of data and falling behind. And this is why customer and team conversation and interaction should be at the center of every business. And that's what we focus on. And when we bring our application to life, that's what you feel. The conversation is in the middle. The conversation can be attached at the same time to a sales conversation, to a sales ticket, to a customer service ticket. It could be just a continuous conversations. Regardless of the channel that you use, the conversation is a continuous string of data. And then we can draw insight and suggest the insight. And we can do stuff that is, kind of very meaningful. I don't know. Do you have any animals?
Yes, I got a dog.
Right.
Yes.
Perfect, right? So let's just say, I have a business and I'm using Nextiva application, and we have a conversation, and you said, I'm taking my dog to the vet, and, as he or she will have a surgery. And then 3 months later, we are talking. Yeah. And something will pop up on my screen saying, right, ask Neil about how his dog is doing, right? And then, but let's just say, you also call me about some business-related issues, and let's just say I'm running a hotel, and you in the room, and you say, I need a toothbrush. But then something else would pop up on the screen, and it would say, 50% or 60% of people that ask for the toothbrush, they also want toothpaste. So ask Neil about toothpaste, right? So we would ask you about toothpaste. And those are just the simple things that, I could go with significantly more examples. We truly help customers kind of to elevate their experience, to connect deeper, to build more personalized relationships. So we do it on all dimensions, not just, solving the technical issue, not just driving the sales, but, we develop a solution that can truly, build emotional empathy with businesses.
Wow, that's incredibly cool. And I know as we're talking today, there's a number of big announcements from you guys. So is there anything else you can share about what your big focus is going to be this year at Nextiva?
Yeah, our very big focus is to launch our Nextiva Connect application, which will be our flagship product. I mean, kind of, if I put it in Microsoft terms, this is our, transition from Windows 3.1 to Windows 95. Or if in Apple terms, this is our iPhone, our very first version of the iPhone. And we are very excited about this, because like I said, that vision in our very first patents that we filed, it was in 2014. And we've been on this journey now, for close 8 years. And, the problem even became bigger when we started. We have learned a ton. And, we bring something to the market that will be transformational and revolutionary. And, like I said before, everybody defines success differently. And by no means this company is Red Cross. We're a commercial enterprise, but, from one of the key success metrics to me, that how I measure the business, is the impact that we make in the world, the way how we help other businesses to make difference in the world around them, to make an impact on other people. And, that's that's probably the most rewarding kind of, more rewarding feeling you can have after building a product. And that's what I'm looking forward to.
Well, we started the podcast today talking about your origin story, and we've now come full circle. And I want to ask if there was a song, piece of music, or a movie or book that has inspired you or helped you in your career. Anything other than Beverly Hills 90210, of course. But is there anything that you can share that we can leave our listeners with and maybe inspire them?
I was a movie nut when I was growing up because, with my obsession with America. But that one movie that always stick out to me is Good Will Hunting.
Yes.
And in many ways, the kind of the underdog story, and then also what these guys have done, after that movie and how they fought for that movie, right, to even be produced and so on. So it was incredible script, incredible movie, incredible story. I was able to relate to that.
That's a great choice. I'll add that onto our Amazon list for other people to browse through and check out. But before I let you go, for anyone listening wanting to find out more information about anything we talked about today, or even continue the conversation and contact your team, what's the best starting point?
So the best way to contact us is at nextiva.com, or, I'm available on LinkedIn. So anybody can contact me on LinkedIn. Just please, contact me and I will accept you. And, I am open and always willing to have great conversation with business people.
Well, there's so much that's inspired me about listening to your conversation. It's one of those stories that will stick with me long, long after this has gone. And that is, you've been a small boy sat in Poland watching TV, watching Beverly Hills 90210 and having that dream of going to America. And you took that route from Poland to Germany, Los Angeles, and to where you are now in Arizona. And I hope it'll inspire other people listening all over the world too. And also for sharing the great work that you're doing at Nextiva. It sounds like you're in for a very exciting year. I'd love to stay in touch with you. If we don't get to meet in person, get you back on the show later in the year and find out how that year's going. But thanks for
the only
sharing
last thing is, because you said, I was the small boy, like the only last thing I would want to leave the audience with, it's important to preserve that in part of you, that small boy.
Yeah.
And I've been fighting really hard to make sure that the small boy is always in me, because that keeps you fresh, that keeps you going, and as we grow up, very often our conventional wisdom takes over because we know so much more, and then we forget the fun, the playfulness, and the willingness to take risk that we were doing when we were younger. And I think that's probably the biggest risk entrepreneurs and business people and anybody can have, is losing that entrepreneurial fire that all of us had at one point in time as children.
Wow, such a beautiful moment to end on. Thank you so much for taking the time to share your story with us today.
All right, awesome. Thank you very much.
I love Thomas's belief there that even the largest communication players end up missing the most valuable part of communications, which is connecting the content of all those different conversations. That is where the richest data resides. And sadly, all too often, data found in conversations with customers across multiple channels is often thrown away, lost, or simply not usable by organisations. Certainly food for thought there. But more than anything, what I remember from this episode several weeks from now is Thomas's story there. From that young lad watching Beverly Hills 90210 in Poland to ending up in the US and literally living the American dream. But I'd love to hear your story. Wherever you're located in the world, please email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram at Neil C. Hughes. And if you'd like to work with me, just check out my website, techblogwriter.co.uk. But that's it for today, so I will see you all bright and early tomorrow. But thank you for listening, and until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.